last week, we focused on listening deeply. And I wanted to kind of continue in that direction again for our opening here. And I think I'll start with reading this invocation. It's an invocation of the Bodhisattva's names that comes from Thich Nhat Hanh. And we read one of these last week, and it was the invocation to Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of Compassion. And this time I'm going to read the invocation to Manjusuri, who is the Bodhisattva of Wisdom. So anyway, I think I'll just start there. Oops. So let's take a breath with the sound of the bell and just settle into this precious time that we have together to cultivate the practice of awareness, mindfulness, love, and compassion. We invoke your name, Manjusuri. We aspire to learn your way, which is to be still and to look deeply into the heart of things and into the hearts of people. We will look with all our attention and open-mindedness. We will look with unprejudiced eyes. We will look without judging or reacting. We will look deeply so that we will be able to see and understand the roots of ill-being, the impermanent and selfless nature of all that is. We will practice your way of using the sword of understanding to cut through the bonds of ill-being, thus freeing ourselves and all beings. So looking deeply is this capacity that Manjusuri embodies for us, that we have, remembering that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are personifications of our own nature, our own awakened nature, that takes all these different forms. And wisdom comes from looking deeply, from being able to settle down to where we can see clearly. And we know what is, we know the truth, we know what we feel, we know what is arising around us. And that insight, that knowing is really and truly one of the very deepest fruits of our practice of mindfulness, of meditation, of looking deeply. When we stop long enough to be aware. And Manjusuri is always pictured holding a sword. And that sword is to cut through the discursive thoughts and the distractions and all of the things that keep us from being able to be clear and to know. And that wisdom can come from that place, but it requires that sometimes, to really be firm and clear. When Hugh and I were with I'm going to jump around a little bit. Hugh and I were with Tsoknyi Rinpoche, one of our Tibetan teachers. He talked to us, he was giving us pointing out instructions, which means that he was trying to, anyway, point out the nature of mind for us to come into an experience of that. And he talked about looking in and looking out at the same time when we're meditating. I mean, actually, you could apply it throughout all activities if you want to. But he was speaking specifically in that moment about, in our meditation practice, how we can practice in such a way that we're both looking in and looking out at the same time. And that's the place where that knowing and that wisdom and that insight can come from. Most of the time we're looking out, 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 out. We're referencing always the external. And the practice of meditation teaches us to look within and to find that wisdom within ourselves. Yeah. I'm not going to respond to chats, Ruthie, but I do see you there. It was Tsoknyi Rinpoche. Yeah. I find it difficult and distracting to be managing all of that at the same time. So anyway, yeah, Tsoknyi Rinpoche was that Lama. I was saying that when we practice meditation, in this case, the practice of mindfulness, which is a very basic, simple practice of just returning over and over to the breath as the anchor for our mind, to be mindful, to be aware of what's happening as it is happening. The breath, the practice of mindfulness on the breath can be this incredible tool to come back to ourselves and to come home, in a sense, to ourselves. Home being that place where we feel safe, we feel comfortable. It's our refuge. We've spoken here about refuge. So we come back to our true self. We come back home to our true self when we start practicing and returning over and over to the present moment through resting awareness on the breath. And when we return to our true self, to our sense of being home within ourselves, we may realize that we've been away for a really long time. And it's that sort of relief or poignant feeling of, oh, where have I been, that sometimes rises up. And then just to remember that the path home is actually not long. I don't have to work too hard because actually home is right here. So we're just coming back to where we've always been. And as another one of my Tibetan teachers would say, don't make a big deal. Just come back over and over. Take another breath. And that breath brings us back. When we sit down, we take our seat and stop all that external activity for a period of time and just return to our breath, breathing in and breathing out. Such a relief, so healing. With each conscious in-breath, And each conscious out-breath, we come home more and more to that place where wisdom is born. We come back to ourselves with each in-breath. And with each out-breath, we release whatever tension is being held. And we start communicating with ourselves. When we communicate with ourselves, we can communicate more easily and with more clarity with those outside of ourselves. And when we pay attention to the breath, we make a connection between the body and the mind. We bring it together in oneness. Our body, speech, or breath, and mind coming together in the present moment, in this experience of oneness with ourselves, with our true self. And breathing in, this is a little gata, little reminder that we can practice with as we practice breathing. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I am breathing out. It's pretty simple. But do we do it most of the time? Are we even aware? No. So breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. And if we sit quietly, silently, and we might count how many seconds the in-breath and how many seconds the out-breath, and focus without interruption entirely on the in-breath and the out-breath. Maybe it's 4 seconds in and 4 seconds out. And for those 4 seconds in and 4 seconds out, we're free. Because we've let go of worries and fears about the future or regrets about the past. And we're aware of whatever it is that's going on right here in the present moment. And this is how we practice. Very, very simply. Learning to just be here for ourselves. And in just a few seconds, we set ourselves free. And this is also the practice of liberation, the practice of meditation, to be free, to be liberated from the endless round of what we call samsara, cyclic existence, going around and around, perpetuating all that suffering. So we're learning to really communicate in a deep way with our true self in this very simple way, without engaging in the past or the future. And also practicing what Thich Nhat Hanh would call non-thinking and non-talking. So when we're meditating, we're not thinking, we're not talking. A practice of mindful breathing is a practice of non-thinking, non-talking. We're just enjoying breathing. That's it. No big deal. And we can do that in any activity. We can do that when we're eating our breakfast. And we're just breathing in and out, and we're enjoying the food, the nourishment, taking a shower, whatever it is that we find ourselves in doing, when we come back and we realize, oh, I'm here, I'm doing this. I'm not out there thinking about that while I'm doing this. I'm just right here with my breath. I haven't lost the thread. So when we stop and look deeply into the heart of things, without thinking, we stop talking, we stop thinking, we stop filling our lives up with the distractions that so often occupy our awareness. We may notice that we are connecting with our own suffering more. Feeling what's underneath the surface of all the talking and the texting and the thinking and the everything. We notice what's there. So coming into a practice like this takes a little bit of courage, because while it's very relaxing and calming and helpful, it also can put us in touch with things that maybe we might have been covering up. The unresolved feelings under the surface, or the pain and the tension that's in our bodies that we don't want to feel, or those kinds of things. But with mindfulness, we can hear or listen to what's really here. What's in there. We have this practice that teaches us to stay present with what is there. And all we have to do is just breathe. We don't have to figure it out. We don't have to do anything with it. But we don't run away from it. We learn to take care of it. We take care of ourselves. Take care of those deeper parts of us. And so when we breathe and walk, too, walking is another way of generating the energy of mindfulness. When we do these things, we are able to stay with what's really there, to feel it, to not run after it, not push it away. But we don't have to be afraid to be with ourselves or to be overwhelmed. Thich Nhat Hanh, I've been reading this wonderful book about communication by Thich Nhat Hanh, and he says, our mindfulness is like a guardian angel. It's much more important to keep our mindfulness than our mobile phone. Our mindfulness is our real protection. It will improve our communication. He went on a long thing about mobile phones and texting and the computer and, all the things we spend all of our time doing now. And, talked about how he doesn't even have a mobile phone. But really and truly, the mindfulness is the great protection, the great assistant, the great guardian angel that is there if we just remember. So we come back, even in the face of the reactive feelings that we might have, or, conversations. We come back over and over again to the breath, which is the way in which we generate mindfulness, being aware, because the breath is that anchor for the mind, not to be carried away by what's, happening all around us. And another one of the pointing out instructions that we receive from Tsoknyi Rinpoche has to do with this idea of coming back over and over again, back to the breath. But the way he put it was that we recognize the busy mind, the reactive emotions, whatever they are. And then when we do recognize, like we take a breath and we go, oh my God, look at all that going on. And then we return instantly. We return. And we are looking in and out at the same time. And then all we do is we rest right there. And pretty soon we go, oh, there it is again. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Oh. And then that goes on for a while. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, where am I? Return. Rest. Another breath. Come back. Beyond the thinking and the talking. And we do this over and over and over again. That's the practice. Stop, pause, slow down, slow down. Here's the order, slow down, pause, and really stop. Sit down, become quiet. What a gift it is to quiet ourselves down for a minute and bring the body and the mind together through the breath. There's no big fancy esoteric thing to do here other than just take another breath. And that right there is a radical act. Especially to those of us who think that we have to do all the time. It's really a miracle what changes. And when we become aware that how the mind is usually somewhere completely different than where the body is, they're not in the same place. We might be sitting there twiddling our thumbs, but our minds are somewhere else completely. So we come back and we bring them together, and we stop thinking, we stop making the list, we stop pursuing those anxious feelings for the period that we have given over. Breathing in, I'm aware of my body. Breathing out, I release the tension in my body. And then walking. We do, for those of you who are new here, we do the walking meditation as part of our practice every time we meet. Slow walking, breathing in and taking a step, and breathing out, taking another step. And really feeling the ground under us, being connected to the breath and the body, no longer lost on the path, thinking about somewhere else when we're actually just walking on the path right here. And another one of the little gathas, the little poems that are done with the breath for the practice, is with the walking. I have arrived. I am home. In the here and the now. I have arrived. I am home. And giving that to ourselves. Touching the earth is such a beautiful way of relieving the feeling of isolation and alienation that so many of us are struggling with right now. I mean, if we are alone, we can still make contact with the earth and with the whole web of life. Thich Nhat Hanh talked about how that the feelings that are there under the surface, the sense of anguish sometimes, or the pain and suffering that we feel, It's like a small child tugging on our sleeve, wanting our attention. And so when we become aware of that small child tugging on our sleeve, we don't push the child away or judge it. We pick it up and we hold it tenderly, give it our attention. And all we have to do is that, you know? But judging it and pushing it away will only make it worse, only make it more insistent. So embracing our suffering and our feelings is another act of coming home to ourselves. We have to embrace our suffering if we want compassion or love to blossom in our lives. That's where it comes from. The world needs us to be at peace with ourselves. The world needs us, Gaia needs us to be happy within ourselves so that we can share that happiness with others, so that we can be there for others, what's the word I'm looking for? Commit. We've made this commitment to relieve suffering in others and in ourselves. So to fulfill that commitment. This is a very simple way of practicing to be there for ourselves and for others. When we can handle our own suffering, it makes us happy because we're not at the mercy of it. And that is an energy that gives us kind of the fuel to do what we need to do at other times for others. I hope that makes sense. And just to bring it back to Manjusuri, this kind of basic ground is the place where the understanding that leads to wisdom is born for ourselves and for others. We see what is. We can't see that if we're, running around or thinking too much or going on and on and on. I speak for myself. I hope I speak for you too.